Hey, what's up, everybody? Todd Zilla here with Zilla Fantasy Elite. Going into a Thursday night theory Carolina and Chicago game here in Week 10, where we're just going to discuss the adjusted line play report, how to read these numbers, what that means, and how to kind of interpret what that means in an island game context. So we're going to do Thursday night theory here. Carolina, Chicago, Week 10, Thursday night football. We have a 38.5 Vegas game total. Chicago 3-point home favorites against Carolina. That's giving Chicago a 20.75 team implied total. Carolina 17.75 team implied total. Now, 38.5 for those of you unaware, that is a really low Vegas game total. Typically, you want those north of 50. Anything below about 46. So getting into the 45, 44 and below, that's considered fairly low. And then anything below 40 is atrocious. So 38.5 is pretty bad. All right. So usually we get into the away team first and go over that. So the away team on offense, offensive pass protection versus defensive pass rush. What does this mean? Well, this is an adjusted sack rate, if you will. It's actually what it is. So if it's first and 25, you probably expect somebody to pass, or like maybe a 4th and 25, you expect somebody to pass. If you get a sack on that particular situation, that's good for your defense, but it doesn't count as much as a sack that you get perhaps on first down with 5 yards to go because you had a 5-yard penalty to start that particular set of downs. A sack that's on 1st and 5 is worth a lot more than a sack that's on 4th and 28 at the end of the game. So that's kind of what you can think of at the adjusted sack rate. So Carolina, number 25 in pass protection. Chicago actually dead last at 32 in the defensive pass rush. What this tells me, it's a red-on-red matchup, but Carolina should have a little bit more time in the pocket than they're used to. That's going to be a little bit better for Bryce Young. He's probably going to find himself with more time than he's used to behind that bad offensive line, which will be good for Carolina's pass game. They should be a little bit better than expected in this particular matchup just because Chicago's defense is so bad. And really this defensive pass rush is just telling us kind of, do you expect them to get sacked or have a bunch of sacks in this game? This is kind of telling us Chicago probably not going to be getting to the ball carrier as much as Carolina has been giving up in the past. So next on, we go to DVOA. So the DVOA is basically pitting historical outcomes. So, if it's 2nd and 5, you're on your own 42-yard line and you run, to the left. What's an average play on that particular scenario at that particular point in time in a game? So 10 minutes left in the game, let's say. So all of those particular plays have some sort of historical average or typical outcome. DVOA is a measurement. Were you better than that or were you worse than that? And obviously if you're better, you're going to get a positive score. If you're worse, kind of get a negative score. If you're even, it's just even. So it's going to rank everybody in the league based off of how they're doing in that DVOA metric. For Carolina, unfortunately for them, they're 31st overall. So second to the worst team on offense in terms of pass DVOA, which means they haven't been very effective passing the ball at all. Fortunately for them, Chicago's defense is number 30 in pass DVOA, so they've been giving it up. Bottom 3 team here in the league, so keep that in mind. Carolina, once again, based off of the DVOA, probably going to be a little better than expected in the pass game. All right, so that's the pass game. That's how you attack pass games, or at least in my way, how you attack pass games. We're going to get into that Carolina run game. Their offensive run blocking, 23. Chicago, number 2 in stopping the run. This particular section of run blocking is kind of an adjusted line play metric as well. You can kind of think of the adjusted sack rate. This is basically saying, hey, if your running back's getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage, that's really bad. That's going to be on your offensive line. That's not really your running back's fault. If they're getting stopped at the line of scrimmage, if you're 2 yards beyond, etc. So really based off of how well that particular run play went, it's going to assign a point total If it's a 10 plus yard gain, they probably think that's a little bit more towards your running back, but it's also good that your offensive line was able to block in order to get them open for 10 yards. So it's kind of an adjusted rate based off of how successful on any given run they are. Were you going backwards? Were you stopped at the line of scrimmage? Only 2 yards, whatever the case may be. Chicago's actually quietly been really, really good in that aspect. Obviously, top 2 there, so they've been stopping people at the line of scrimmage, hardly giving up any yards per carry. And Carolina's been pretty bad in that department. So this is telling me any particular run, Carolina is probably going to be getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage or no more than 3 or 4 yards on any given carry. And then the DVOA. This is similar to the past DVOA where in this particular game scenario, when you're up 10 points, you're on the opponent's 32-yard line. It's the third quarter, 4 minutes left. This is the average run play in this particular situation. Were you better than that? Were you worse than that? That's what this is talking about. So Carolina actually 29, one of the worst teams in the league in the run DVOA. Chicago top 7. So these green-red matchups are the ones that really should be highlighted in the adjusted line play report because that's a significant advantage for one way or the other. And in this scenario, Chicago's defense is significantly better in the run game than Carolina's offense. This is telling me if you're playing an island game, you're going to want to attack Carolina's pass catchers and probably not anything to do with the running backs. Now, if Carolina's pass game is also poor, that would suggest that they're probably going to have to get the ball out quickly, which could lead to a few more receptions for the running back. That's not the case this week. It's just a really bad matchup for their run game, and it's actually a slightly positive matchup for their pass game, or even, which usually means like the studs eat. Carolina, we've really only seen Adam Thielen produce in that kind of environment, and that's probably what it's going to continue to be in this particular game. I wouldn't be shocked to see Thielen have, a bounce back from last week where he's getting, over 100 yards and probably a touchdown in this. Carolina should find it a lot easier to move the ball in the air in this particular matchup against Chicago's defense. All right, now getting into the Chicago side, their offensive pass protection, number 27, Carolina, number 11, and getting after the quarterback. Pretty significant advantage here for Carolina. I would suggest that Carolina's defense should be generating quite a few sacks in this particular matchup. Again, this is adjusted sack rate. Chicago, one of the worst. Carolina, almost top 10 there, so top third team here. And really suggesting that Chicago is probably going to have some pressure there on offense. But we've seen Tyson Bagent have some meltdowns, but we've also seen him be pretty good, pretty accurate with the ball. 14 of 17 to start these games. It doesn't seem like he's necessarily getting blown up too much, and a lot of this could have been from Justin Fields because he was taking a lot of sacks when he was in there. So keep that in mind. This is partly on Justin Fields as well as Tyson Bagent. So the pass DVOA, we have Chicago at number 26, Carolina at 14. Again, this is a pretty significant advantage for Carolina's defense. This is kind of suggesting that Chicago's pass game, it doesn't look to be a very good matchup. They're going to probably struggle to move the ball in the air in this matchup with the Carolina defense. It's not good for them in this particular situation. And that's how, Chicago kind of looks in the pass game. But getting into the offensive run blocking side, we see Chicago actually top 4 at number 4 in the offensive run blocking, while Carolina's second to the worst at number 31. This is saying Carolina's actually getting quite a few Chicago's getting quite a few chunk gains on offense. They're top 4 in those run blocking skills. They're not getting hit behind the line of scrimmage a ton. They're not getting hit at the line of scrimmage a ton and tackled. While Carolina's the exact opposite, where they're just giving up huge chunk gains pretty frequently and never stopping anybody behind the line of scrimmage. So this is looking good for the Chicago run game. Getting into the DVOA, it's almost as juicy. Chicago top 10 in run DVOA, so historical comps. They've been very, very good in that department. Carolina, number 32, they're the worst team in the league this year in terms of the run game and how they look compared to historical averages. So this is an island game matchup. It's a very low Vegas game total. based off of all this info, it does look like the pace of play is a little slow for these teams. You know, they're kind of middle of the pack or bottom of the pack in a lot of this stuff. So pace down here, Carolina 13th overall, kind of middle of the pack, but then offensive neutral situations are 24th when they're leading, 27th when it's close, within 6 points, or 29th, but when they're trailing by 7 or more points, they're one of the faster teams in the league. Carolina's often trailing by 7 or more points, which is why you see their overall pace of play at number 13. Chicago, 21st in overall pace of play. Nothing really to write home about in any of these categories other than that, hey, when it's a neutral situation, there's no need for a 2-minute drill or anything like that. They're one of the slowest teams in the league. When the game's close, they're one of the slowest teams in the league, and they're kind of middle of the pack when they're either leading or trailing by 7+. So that's not any good for the offensive players. We already have a low Vegas game total, so this is telling me, hey, there's probably not going to be a ton of fantasy points scored. If you can get the guys that are scoring the 1 or 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns in this game into your lineup, you're probably going to be doing very well in a game where you're probably going to want to attack at least one, if not 2 of the defenses in this particular island game. So for me, Carolina with that potential for adjusted sack rate, that's kind of a juicy thing for me because the defenses score points off of those sacks. We've also seen Tyson Bagent have some meltdowns in terms of turnovers, which could also play an effect. The one thing to kind of be concerned about is Chicago's run game should be so effective that they might not be passing it all that often in this game, which again is going to limit your opportunities for sacks. Chicago we see is very good at stopping the run, so hey, that's not bad, right? They're not going to be able to run very, very well in this game, but the pass game matchup is neutral, but it should be a lot better for Carolina than you'd expect for them in their particular scenarios this year. What that's telling me is, hey, Carolina's going to be pretty decent moving the ball, but it's not like a super great matchup for them. They should be effective, but they're not going to be able to run the ball. So when they get in, kind of the field gets condensed when they get closer on some of these drives. They should be able to move the ball, but then they're going to stall out because of this run game. Or get behind the chains on some of these drives once they have moved into the Chicago territory. This is telling me Carolina's kicker is going to be probably pretty effective in this too, where Chicago, hey, they might have a similar problem where they're very effective running the ball, but the pass game is pretty ineffective. That might stall out drives. So defenses and kickers, you're probably going to want some sort of combination in this for the island game. And then getting, Carolina pass options and Chicago run options. That's going to be how I attack this particular island game matchup. I haven't looked at the prices, but, Adam Thielen's looking juicy. I'm looking at Bryce Young. I'm going to look at probably Carolina defense. And then looking at Carolina kicker in this particular matchup. It's probably going to be super affordable in this matchup this week. So hopefully I can go out there and make a nice juicy lineup. I was pretty successful there on Monday night. I was actually sitting with the second best score at one point very late into the matchup, and ended up being really, really successful on Monday night, where I made like 8-10x of what my entry fees were for those island game matchups on DraftKings. So anyway, again, this is Thursday Night Theory. We're trying to show you what the adjusted line play report is like. How do you interpret some of these things? What do these different matchups mean when it's a super plus matchup? When it's even matchup, what does it mean? That's what this is here for, the Thursday Night Theory, to let you know how to use this adjusted line play report. So when you see all of those come out on Saturday, you can, feel comfortable that you're interpreting these things right and using the information to the best of your ability, and you can go out and win some money in those DFS tournaments. You can go out and win money in those prop bets. You can go out, make sure those start-sit decisions in your redraft leagues or your dynasty leagues are the correct ones. Get yourself to the playoffs, win that cheddar, win that bag in your leagues. That's what this is all about. Just making a little bit more informed decisions in your fantasy lineups, whether that's DFS, prop bet, or your start-sit decisions. That's what we're here for. It's always going to be free. That's what I pride myself in. Never going to charge for this stuff. So really appreciate those who have watched, tuned in. Hopefully you can take this into an island game matchup and be successful, win some money in your Thursday night matchups. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks. Bye.